Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and this is a full circle moment that I feel like you and I, as a community, have manifested. We've talked a lot about Fallout remasters and remakes, and while we have yet to reach that ultimate goal of the 3 in New Vegas package, we have something that may be a little close to talk about today. So it's almost a full circle moment when I think of Mass Effect Legendary Edition. It finally gets revealed, and the next question I get asked before the game's even out is, yo Matty, Dragon Age Legendary Edition? I went, hold up. That's actually not a bad idea, and we talked about the possibility of that. So now, in the case of Bethesda, we're getting Skyrim Anniversary Edition, and a lot of people tap me on the shoulder and go, yo Matty, Fallout 4 Anniversary / Special Edition? And I went, hold up again. That's a pretty good idea, and there is some legitimacy to this idea we're going to get into, but also a couple of obstacles we'll need to hurdle to determine whether or not Bethesda could tackle this game. And why specifically Fallout 4, when on this channel we've championed for years that we want 3, we want New Vegas? Well, the answer lies within Creation Club, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But for now, if you're new here, you're looking for more Bethesda conversations, do consider subscribing so you can check out my mullet each and every day. Pretty cool, digging the new haircut. All right. Anyway, thank you all so much for showing up. Hope you're having a happy Monday, as happy as a Monday can be. So like I said, this all begins with Creation Club. For both Skyrim and Fallout 4, they were running this club that was receiving curated content every now and then. Now, in the case of Skyrim, it all shut down in November of 2019. And then in an interview later on in 2020, Todd Howard had said, they're still working on Creation Club content, but we had yet to see any of that. So a lot of us assumed that Skyrim would have suddenly a big blowout of a larger scale Creation Club piece of content. Now we know what that is, right, with Skyrim Anniversary Edition. When it comes to Fallout 4, interestingly enough, the Creation Club content stopped in the exact same month, November of 2019. Now, we haven't received any updated comments since, but this is where people started to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's pretty self-explanatory. They both stopped at the same time. We have Skyrim with its anniversary. You wrapped all of the Creation Club content, both old and now we know new content, and it's being sold to us again. So a lot of people are looking at Fallout 4 and thinking, what's stopping Bethesda from doing that? A next-gen patch, all of the expansions and DLCs in there, and wrap up the Creation Club content, boom, sell it. Because you got stuff like the Fallout 3 Capital Wasteland visit that you can do, which I think a lot of people would see as a welcome surprise. What is stopping Bethesda from doing this again? Right now, it doesn't seem like there's too many roadblocks, but still ones worth talking about. First and foremost is a lawsuit of sorts, which tied in the season pass into Creation Club content, where one disgruntled gamer thought that they should have Creation Club content in their season pass because they paid for it. And this hasn't had many updates since, but once again, it's definitely worth addressing that this could have had Bethesda put the brakes on the program until they figured something out on a legal basis to then continue development of Creation Club content. The other reason they could have stopped it as well, how many people were really playing it? I know a lot of the Bethesda audience that I interact with comes from a PC background because modding is very dominant there. And if you're modding your game, you're never going to touch Creation Club. So a lot of console players became attracted to it, or content creators who wanted to dive in and see what it was all about. Of course, people who were doing data mining wanted to look into it, but I don't think it was generating a lot of revenue where maybe they felt comfortable putting a pause on it and shifting some of those CC devs over to something like Skyrim, where they're doing 26 new pieces of content. The other thing that could really be stopping them is Fallout 4's age. Right now, it's only about 6 years old, or it's just going to be this November, and that's not quite at a right point where it's time for an anniversary. And with that in mind, there's also an FPS boost available for the title. The counterpoint to that, playing devil's advocate with myself here, is that Skyrim had a free mod on consoles that you could download, and it would unlock the FPS for the game, so you could play in 60. But still, this was a more official effort from Xbox and Bethesda, providing FPS boost for Fallout 4 as well as Fallout 76. So that was already in place, where maybe if they were considering something beyond that, they would have held it off until then. But this also is because Bethesda put themselves in a bit of a hole by teasing Fallout 4 60 FPS on the Series S before the console had even launched. So those are, I'd say, minor obstacles, right? Does it really matter if it's got 60 FPS if you're doing a next-gen update that's going to include the likes of ray tracing? I'd say not. It's just a bonus on top of everything else. And with the Creation Club stopping, we don't know the internal reasoning behind it, but given that they both stopped at the same point, perhaps this was a plan that was put into place because this was right after Fallout 76 had come out a year later. Bethesda Game Studios was not going to have to release for a very long time. Now we know it's not until the end of 2022, about 4 years later. So how do you fill that gap up? That's what they've always been targeting with new mobile games like Blades getting big updates, and Shelter, of course, was major for them. So Skyrim Anniversary was one of their targets, and what's stopping them from doing something like Fallout 4? I guess the next question would be, when do you release it? Does it come between Starfield and Skyrim, sometime in early 2022? Is that even a right time to release it? Do you sit on it until 2023? Because Bethesda Game Studios could, for the first time in really ever, have pretty steady output. So a lot of this is all worth considering on both ends, where it's very legitimately possible that they could just squeeze in another Fallout 4 release with next-gen updates and go, hey, here you go, have fun, and oh, Creation Club content's with it, yep, upgrade, all that fun stuff. Or they could just not be doing anything at all. The much more legitimate question, because I don't think Bethesda's allergic to making money and they'll figure out how to work that out, is, does this impact the fragile knees that 76 stands upon? Will they break if you drop a new Fallout product on top of it? Because the brand strength for Elder Scrolls is something wildly different from that of Fallout. Fallout 76, I've been playing it recently. I'm working on some content for it, and it has improved. But there is no denying the absolutely destructive launch it had, that it hurt the Fallout brand, where people are, I think, a little bit more cautious than with something like Elder Scrolls Online, where when it launched, there were issues, but you could see beneath it there was potential. And now I'd say that ZeniMax Online Studios has done a phenomenal job realizing that potential and building the game up, where something like Elder Scrolls 6 being announced was not the massive killing blow to ESO where I went, oh, I'm gonna wait, or oh, you know what, I'm good. If anything, I think it strengthened ESO knowing there's a future in the brand. But with 76, it's wildly different. It's one of the most popular Game Pass games. It's getting the Pit next year. There's a lot of things coming its way, but it's only just now really finding its way, because in 2020, they launched Wastelanders, and that was the start of something new, and they've added Steel Rain since then, all these new storylines and NPCs, and they've slowly reworked the base game to now start to expand. So 76 also had its pacing completely disrupted compared to something like Elder Scrolls Online, where it's not as far along in as many years as ESO was, which makes it, I think, a much more weak product. So Bethesda has to also take a look at 76 and go, do we hurt this by releasing Fallout 4 again? There's always the potential of, and I know this may sound galaxy brain, Fallout 4 co-op. This was an idea before 76 became the game it is today. Bethesda was going to add co-op into Fallout 4. That was legitimately a thing. And so when you look at that, is this something that gets thrown into Special Edition? I really wouldn't want to see Fallout have 2 consecutive multiplayer releases, but at least with Fallout 4, you've got the base game, which you know you could play by yourself, and I think it is a solid game on its own in an individual environment. So something more additive wouldn't upset me, but it would just, on the prospect of like, oh my god, another multiplayer Fallout, would be a bit scary. But does that damage 76? So these are questions that need to be asked. The last question that I want to pose is, of course, does that remove the possibility of Fallout 3 New Vegas coming back if you do a Fallout 4 Special Edition? Because while 3 New Vegas are much more adored by hardcore fans, and I think they are the definitive Fallout experiences, as much as I love what the early Fallout games did, like 1 and 2. They're amazing, especially Fallout 2. I have a lot of love for that game. But does the strength of Fallout 4 being the best-selling Fallout game really hurt the possibility of them bringing back 3 in New Vegas and starting to create a remaster and remake cycle? I think not, because if you tap into nostalgia once, fans are indefinitely, there's no doubt, going to want it to carry forward. They're going to want you to go back to the next one and the next one. And what Bethesda needs to be careful with is, if you go back to 3 in New Vegas, say, then people are going to ask about Oblivion. They're going to ask about Morrowind, which I would love to see Bethesda do just as much, believe it or not. More so Morrowind, less Oblivion. I love Oblivion, by the way, and I've played way more of it. But I think Morrowind would be a hit if it got some type of remake treatment. And that would be just next level hype for a lot of people. But you do have to ask yourself, Are we being impatient and taking a product so soon that this may hurt the possibility of what we're really reaching for? And I don't think so. But that's just all this, of course, is my opinion on things between the release timing, the possibility, what's lining up, what isn't. I'd say the odds are in pretty good favor that they eventually do this. I don't know if they squeeze it out next year. I don't. I think you want a lot of people, unless you're doing it early in the year, you want people to be talking about Starfield and ramping up to that. Like, when are we going to see Starfield? When's the next trailer? When's the next location in sight? You know, the whole thing. So personally, I think they're going to do it. But I think right now with 76 entering its expeditions in early 2022, I'm of the mindset that you won't start to see Bethesda Fallout remasters and re-releases until 2023, which sucks to say as a lifelong Fallout fan. So that's where I sit on it, because I think by that point in time, they have already released Starfield, they've released Expeditions, they've given 76 a little bit more life, and you can start to dip into the nostalgia pool when there's going to be a lull again, and you don't have to market something. You've got Skyrim, which will sell itself, and now you've got to kill time until Elder Scrolls 6 rolls around. Then is the time to hit some Fallout remasters. 76 has had a long enough lifespan at that point. We're going to be nearing 5 years in the year of 2023, which is crazy to think about. So that's just my standpoint on things. I think they'll do it. I just don't think it'll come as soon.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I don't think it'll come as soon as we're expecting. So that's where I am on it. I'd love to know what you're thinking about a Fallout 4 Special Edition. Is it something you're hoping for? And if so, when do you think it's dropping? If not, let me know as well. Really looking forward to reading your thoughts on this. And until next time, I'll talk to all of you very soon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below, along with the Patreon. Big thank you to all the members, all the patrons who continue to show a lot of love. We just released our holiday and fall plans, and get ready. It's going to start popping off. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.